we have really this divine support and inspiration, and Holy Laura, St. Sophia Cathedral, our saints and our holy places inspire us, because it is a proof that we fighting not for statehood, for European, Euro-Atlantic choice of Ukrainian people. We're fighting for truth itself. We're fighting for life itself. We are on the side of light. Yes. And we're fighting against darkness, which try to eliminate us. And this is really existential fighting.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode. In it, we'll be discussing a topic that is very important to so many Ukrainians: religion. We talk with a representative of the country's single largest faith, the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, in the form of Metropolitan Yevstratiy Zoria, who I will be referring to out of politeness and courtesy as Your Eminence. And we talk about a great number of different things because this is complicated, with a long, complex, difficult history. This is a land with a multitude of religions that have, by and large, learned to generally live together, with one notable exception. And yes, we will be discussing this controversial new law that's been passed here, banning one group posing as a church, but who are in reality agents of the Russians, and who are furthering Moscow's designs. It's also controversial because it is used by the Kremlin's propagandists, both in Russia, here in Ukraine, and in the larger abroad, proposing that this law is being used to discriminate against Christians. That's simply not the case, as you'll soon hear. I hope you'll find this episode informative, educational, and most importantly, an insight into the nature of the people of this country. Please enjoy. Your Eminence, thank you very much for coming and speaking to us here. It's a great honor.
Thank you.
Religion is a very difficult subject. It is a very personal subject. It is something that identifies us. So we're going to speak about religion in Ukraine, but I hope that we can do it in such a way that my audience will find it accessible, and we won't get, because there's so much history here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's so much history here. I mean, this goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, over 1,000 years.
Yeah, sure.
But let's speed it up to the most recent situation, guys, and we'll get to the controversy a little bit, but I think until we talk about the context, we can't get to that controversy. Let's take it from 2018, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
When the establishment of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine is created and separates from the Moscow Patriarchy. Why was that necessary? How did it happen? What was the cause? And actually, how did it happen?
First of all, thank you for invitation, and it's a great honor to be here with you, with your audience. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
And I will try to do my best to explain.
Such a complicated,
very complicated, even for Ukrainians. I cannot imagine how it's complicated for foreigners. But anyway, first of all, as you told, Ukrainian church history have very deep roots, and baptism of Ukraine itself, official establishment of the church structure in Ukraine happened 1,000 and more than 30 years ago in 988. But Christianity was on Ukrainian lands before, because first roots of Christianity we find even at the time of apostles. And we believe that Apostle Andrew preached the gospel on Ukrainian territories, modern Ukrainian territories in Crimea and along the Dnieper River in the 1st century. And since that time, slowly Christianity grows. But as established structure, Orthodox Church in Ukraine was created after the baptism of Kievan state by great Prince Volodymyr as a part of Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople.
Yes.
Because if we compare with a Roman Catholic structure, this church have one global single structure with one visible head, Pope of Rome. Orthodoxy is a family of local churches where we have no someone comparable with Pope of Rome in his role, but traditionally, according canon law, according historic tradition, Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, who is a primate of Patriarchate, which reside in ancient Constantinople, now is Istanbul, in Turkey. He is a leader of Orthodoxy, and church in Ukraine been established by the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Patriarch send priests, send bishops to Ukraine to preach the gospel, to baptize people. And since that time until the end of 17th century, Ukrainian church was a part of Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople.
In Constantinople. And so you answer to the Patriarch. The Patriarchy was in Constantinople.
But
you were part of that.
On that time, for 7 centuries, the Ukrainian church was an integral part of the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople, but with wide rights of autonomous self-governance. And after subordination of part of Ukrainian land to Moscow Tsardom in the middle of 17th century, Tsarist government tried to subordinate Ukrainian church too. And
so instead of being answerable to the Patriarch in Constantinople,
they tried.
That was still Constantinople at that time. Instead of the Patriarch there, the Patriarch in Moscow tried to draw Kiev.
Yeah, sure.
I understand.
And, that Moscow's church, because Moscow itself been created as a small town in 1147, 150 years after baptism of Kievan Rus.
Yes.
And from this only one very fact, we can find that Russian church is not able to be mother to Ukrainian church, but they pretend to be mother.
Yes.
And, for me, only one explanation, how it possible that daughter is older than mother.
Yes.
In only one case when we're talking about mother-in-law. not real mother. And because Russian church separated from Kievan church in the middle of 15th century after the fall of Constantinople and Byzantine Empire. And because Muscovy as a state on that time was only one independent Orthodox country, because all other countries, including Ukraine, was under the power of Catholic or Protestant or Muslim rulers. And Muscovy, on that time, began to believe that they are real successors of Rome and Byzantine heritage.
The third Rome,
yes,
they like to say.
Their idea that they are third and final Rome, the center of the Christian civilization, the center of...
And they get to decide what that is.
Spiritual power and secular power. But without Kiev, without our history, without our heritage, without the place where people of ancient truths been baptized, they have no real connection between their history, because their history in reality starts from time of Mongol Tatar Empire, Golden Horde, from the beginning of 14th century, when the Prince of Moscow, Ivan Kalita, been appointed by Mongol Tatar Khan as a
what we would call a bagman in America. We would call Moscow became the bagman for the Mongol horde. They would take their tribute in Moscow, not from Kiev, because Kiev was too hard for them to control. So they built Muscovy.
In reality, they've been created as a principality because of the will of Mongol Tatar rulers, but they pretend to be successors of Rome, of Roman and Byzantine Empire, even coat of arms of Russia. Till now, it's a two-headed eagle.
One going east, one going west.
But originally, it's a Byzantine symbol. And they stole this symbol to have a proof that they are real successors of Byzantine Empire. Because Ukraine at that time was politically weak and divided between two big powers, between Muscovy itself and Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, great country at the east of Europe. We politically have no power to resist.
The burden of Ukraine is the empires that manipulate it through much of its history.
And when Muscovy take over power over Ukrainian church, slowly they turn this power to the instrument of imperial unification of Ukrainian nation.
Yes.
And you know that during the 18th and 19th century, the empire even not recognize the uniqueness of Ukrainian nation.
Yes.
They told about Ukrainians that we are little Russians, small Russia, or western southern part of Great Russia, as Putin
Their
now,
mentality is still the same.
Yes. And when Romanov monarchy collapsed in 1917 after the February Revolution.
Yes, after the Tsarist empire.
Ukraine struggled for secular independence, and Ukrainian clergy and laity tried to be independent from a Russian imperial church authority.
Yes.
And if we return into modern time, our struggle for church independency starts not 5 or 10 or even
almost
30.
immediately after the fall of the Soviet Union.
We struggle for all the time of 20th century, from the time of Ukrainian Revolution from 1917, but unfortunately unsuccessfully for a long time, because we have no our Ukrainian statehood, independent statehood. But when Ukraine achieved reestablishment of independency in 1991, part of Ukrainian Orthodox people struggled for church independence, full church independence, because of huge influence of the Russian Orthodox Church, because Russian Orthodox Church is one of the biggest Orthodox church in our family, and they have behind Kremlin during Soviet time and now.
The church as an instrument of the state.
Absolutely. In Russian case, it's a great problem for the church that they are not cooperative to rulers, to Kremlin. They are integral part of Kremlin system. They just wearing in cassocks, in church clothes, but in reality, Patriarch Gundyaev, leader of Russian Orthodox Church, and others, they are just officials, first of all. And just after that, they pretend to be a religious leader.
But still, so after the fall of the Soviet Union, you have a Ukrainian church here, but it is still answering to the Patriarch in Moscow. Is that correct?
It's a little bit complicated because Orthodoxy in Ukraine...
It is all very complicated.
Orthodoxy in Ukraine was unfortunately divided in two parts. One part still was under jurisdiction of Russian Orthodox Church. Another one was self-proclaimed as an independent church, but not recognized by ecumenical patriarch and other churches. Until the time of 2018, we was in process of negotiations. We tried to achieve this official recognition from ecumenical patriarchate, because ecumenical patriarchate is real mother of our church.
And this is back in Istanbul. Used to be Constantinople. So you make a how did the process work? Did you made a proposal to the church in Constantinople, and they made a decision about whether or not
we presented to ecumenical patriarchate as our mother church whole situation, what's going on in Ukraine, why it's not canonical to Russian Orthodox Church to have their jurisdiction in Ukraine, because on that time, at the end of the 17th century, they grabbed power over Ukrainian church, not according to procedures.
And Constantinople agreed with you.
Yeah. Finally, in October of 2018, they officially recognized that Russian Orthodox Church have no canonical right to have jurisdiction over Ukraine, and Ukraine have as independent state and independent nation with a huge majority of Orthodox people, because in Ukraine we have almost 75% of entire Ukrainian population as Orthodox Christians. We have all rights to have our independent church, and ecumenical patriarch himself convey General Council of Bishops, all Orthodox bishops of who resided in Ukraine and served in Ukraine from three parts of divided Ukrainian Orthodoxy.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, from the side of Moscow Patriarchate, only two hierarchs joined this unification council. All others who struggled for independency was presented
With your own patriarchy, your own church, your own.
Yeah. We were there.
You don't have to answer to Moscow anymore.
Yeah,
I remember when that happened, and I remember the Russians were very angry.
Absolutely,
very angry.
Absolutely.
But you know who I heard from more than the church were the politicians in Russia. It's this connection of the church and state. Even their patriarch, Kirill, is a former KGB agent, it is said.
You know, it's no former.
There is no former KGB agent. Yes, this is true.
KGB is for life.
I mean, the idea that a Ukrainian Orthodox, a follower of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church would have to answer to a former KGB agent in Moscow, especially after 2014. I remember when this happened, and they were so angry in 2018, and they said, "Oh, it's not legitimate because of this. It's not legitimate because of that." But what it came right down to, from my perspective, was the empire was afraid of losing a part of control over Ukraine. This is political as much as it's religious.
It's even more and even worse to empire, because the cornerstone, one of the cornerstones of Russian imperial idea is succession from ancient Rome to modern Russian country. But without Ukrainian link, without our heritage and history, they have no connection. They lose the cornerstone of their imperial idea, and why they now try to reunify Ukraine, occupy not just our lands, but to reoccupy our history, our heritage, our soul, to vanish Ukrainian identity itself. Because if we Ukrainians are true successors of Kievan ancient state, Kievan principality, Kievan Rus, who are Muscovites. It's important to underline. In English, I know that for centuries was description for this country, not Russia. Because it's since
it was called Muscovy.
Muscovy.
That's right.
Because this title is their native name. Because
it's only when they start to build out into empire that they steal the word Rus from Ukrainian Rus and adopt it to themselves.
And
sure. Yes, there's so much more. I know this is very complicated.
And another one important point.
Yes.
During Soviet time and even after collapse of Soviet Union, almost 40% of all network of Russian Orthodox Church was in Ukraine. Without control over Ukraine, Russian Orthodox Church lose almost half.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Of their power, because they looks like huge, powerful, etc. But a huge part of their structure, global structure, is in Ukraine. And when they lose this control, they lose.
Who are they? They don't know anymore if they don't have it.
And another one important point that really for decades, especially contemporary Moscow Patriarchy, was re-established by Stalin's decree in 1943. And since that time, specifically after the end of the World War II, Stalin's government in cooperation with Moscow Patriarchy, try to re-establish this patriarchate as supreme patriarchate, as they try to proclaim Moscow Patriarch as ecumenical, universal first patriarch. And since that time, Moscow and allies, church allies of Moscow, fighting against ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople and try to transfer from him to Moscow, main important role. You remember, and audience, I believe, that when Patriarch Gundyaev met with Pope Francis in Havana,
yes,
Kirill pretend to be someone comparable with Pope. He told in his speech and statement that we both have global responsibility. But Pope of Rome is the head of the Roman Catholic Church in all the world. That's and right. Patriarch, all Catholics.
The Orthodox Church does not operate that way.
Yeah. But
Moscow wanted to be a pope. He wanted to be an Orthodox pope.
And losing of Ukraine, losing of the power over Ukrainian church is destruction of their imagination.
First among equals, the one who gets to decide what it is to be Slavic, what it is to be Orthodox, all of these things. It's the mentality of Moscow.
Another important point why politics in Russia was so furious because of Ukrainian church independency is that recognition of independency of Ukrainian church is like a sacred divine sign that Ukrainians are really independent, unique nation, and Ukrainian statehood is a real, not fake. It's not just a joke of the history like Putin.
Or a type of Russian that has been seduced away by the West.
Yeah. And for them, it's not acceptable because in Orthodox tradition, we have deep connectivity between national identity, church identity, and statehood. You can find in Georgia, Georgian Orthodox Church, Georgian Patriarchate, in Serbia, Serbian, in Bulgaria, Bulgarian, in Romania, Romanian. And Russia pretend that Moscow Patriarchate is a church for all territory of former, not even Soviet Union, but former Russian Empire.
Yes.
But without Ukraine, without Church of Ukraine, they have no real power to fulfill this ideology.
Again, it's a method of empire, which brings us to the controversy that I think we need to discuss, obviously, is the recently adopted law, which is outlawing any church, but the Ukrainian, the UOC in particular, from taking allegiance to anybody in Moscow, to taking allegiance to the patriarchy in Moscow. Many have the Russians and many who are foolish, who are fooled into their propaganda, use this as a weapon to say that Kiev is outlawing religion, that they're persecuting Christians. There are many Christians in Ukraine. Catholics, Protestants, Baptists.
Sure.
There are Jews.
There are Muslims.
There are Hindu. There are
Buddhist.
Take your pick.
Yeah.
What I find interesting is that nobody recognizes that there's only one church that is being challenged, and it is being challenged because it pays its allegiance to an enemy state, working in coordination with that enemy state to destroy and kill and commit crimes against the people of Ukraine. So it's not a church. It's almost like what we would call a fifth column. It's an organ of Moscow, and is being restricted solely for that reason. That's my interpretation. But I'd like you to talk to why you think it's necessary for this law.
First of all, from our previous conversation, you and audience can understand how for Russia, for Russian regime, control over religious activity or over religious life is important. And really, it's not connected only to Orthodox Church. Yes, Orthodox Church is a most visible example of Kremlin control over religion. But at the same time, in Russia, all major religious unions, Protestant unions, Muslim unions, even Jewish unions, all of them are controlled by government. Specifically now, since the special military operation started 2.5 years ago. And I know from our brothers, from other religious communities, from Protestant, from Jews, from Muslims, that for decades, Russia, through the people from their side, through the Jews, Muslims, Protestants, try to reunite Ukrainian religious life and turn it back to unity with Kremlin. For example, the chief rabbi of Ukraine, Yaakov Doblai, told many times publicly that before the full-scale aggression, some so-called Russian-speaking Jews, leaders of Russian-speaking Jews, came to him to Kiev and present him plans that we will support your activity, your charity, schools, kindergartens, care centers. We are ready to spend millions of dollars because we so love you and your work, etc., etc. But only one thing what we ask from your side, you must support unity between Ukraine and Russia, custom union, political unity,
cultural,
whatever. Because we
love you so much,
and
we admire you, and after all, we're all one people. I've heard this time and time again with the Russians.
It's a problem. It's a problem which was for Muslims, for Protestants, and specifically for Orthodox Church, because Orthodox Church in Ukraine is the biggest religious community.
Yes.
And control over leadership, over legal structure of the church gives Russians huge instrument to operate, even to weaponize religion.
Yes, and to hide behind religion. Yes.
Because you can imagine that this network is able to reach people's souls, people's hearts in small towns, in
what a
villages.
Great information source.
And church in Ukraine is one of the most trustable
people tell
institutions.
They reveal their souls, everything to
and they believe,
church,
and they believe, if a priest preaching something, he preaching truth.
Yes.
And when Moscow Patriarchate priest publicly told that Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus It's the same Holy Rus.
Mm-hmm.
As not possible to divide Holy Trinity, it's not possible to divide three nations.
Oh, it's so cynical. That's
absolutely
to weaponize the Trinity. It's
absolutely. I had more than 10 years ago, I had one conversation with one person from United States, from the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia, or White Church,
yes.
which was in the Russian diaspora separated from Moscow Patriarchate, and they told that Moscow Patriarchate is created by communists, and they don't recognize even that this is a real church leadership. But after collapse of Soviet Union, the most part of Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia reunited with Moscow Patriarchate under leadership of Putin in 2007. But 5 years later, I had conversation in United States during one conference with one person from the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia, and I asked how you feel. You are 5 years inside Moscow Patriarchate. And this person answered me very interesting way. We even not imagine the level of cynicism which we faced.
Cynicism,
yeah.
Inside the church, inside the Moscow Patriarchy, in the Moscow Patriarchy, and probably corruption as well.
If for me personally, if someone asked me how to describe Moscow Patriarchate internal atmosphere in one word, it will be cynicism. In everything. You can imagine now, Patriarch Gundyaev defrocked one parish priest in Moscow who just changed one word in officially approved text of the prayer, which all priests in Russia obliged to read out every time when they served. And this particular priest, changed the word we pray for victory on the word we pray for peace. And because he changed this word and pray for peace, he been defrocked from priesthood by Patriarch Kirill Gundyaev himself. It happened.
That's shocking.
Yeah, this is one of many examples.
You see Russian priests blessing fighter jets and tanks and things like this. And this
missiles,
is the same. This is the same patriarchy that they are demanding. Ukrainians pay attention to a patriarchy that is blessing weapons of war that are killing Ukrainians. To me, it is
even worse.
Amazing.
Disturbing. That this spring, Moscow Patriarchate officially, and Patriarch Gundyaev himself officially starts to describe this war of Russia against Ukraine as a holy war.
Yes, a holy war.
Holy war. And Patriarch Gundyaev, during his sermons, told that when Russian soldiers will fall on the battlefield, all their sins will be vanished and their souls immediately goes to paradise. Really, it's not Christianity, it's a jihadism.
Yes, it is. But why would what surprises me, and for those who are critical of this law, I cannot understand why any country or any people would accept to be part of a church that, at the same time as it's carrying the word of God to its flock, to its constituencies, would also at the same time be blessing weapons of war that kill them. So it's and also do we not also know, Your Eminence, that these churches that are run by people who are faithful to the Patriarchy of Moscow have also been found to have things like maps or money or are helping to locate Ukrainian military units, again, because oftentimes the faithful will come to the church thinking it's an honest and true thing. They will provide them with information. So it really isn't about a church.
Absolutely.
It's about the power of the empire that comes out of Moscow. Have I got that right? I'm trying to get this to my audience to understand that this isn't about crushing Christianity. This is a fifth column.
Yeah, sure. And this law established by Ukraine, these amendments to the law, have only one goal: to protect Ukrainian freedom of religion from Russian aggressive interference and from attempts of Kremlin to use our freedom, our religion, our affiliation to religious life as a weapon against us. It's not—
Which they have a history of doing. They use religion, they use ethnicity, they use the different nationalities that exist within Ukraine because empires have come through here. They divide and they conquer.
Yeah,
that is what
sure.
but I don't think that's working. Can I tell you a story?
Yeah, sure.
The first time I came to Ukraine was in 2001 for the visit of Pope John Paul II.
Yeah, I remember.
And I remember the streets of Kiev being lined with Ukrainian Orthodox Church faithful who were very upset that a Catholic pope was would visit the Lavra, for example, was just here. And they were protesting all along the streets. Then he went to Lviv, and he was met with 1 million, faithful, many of whom were Poles, and as he was a Polish pope. But I saw a very different, because I was here for this visit, I saw a very big divide between religions and regions of Ukraine. When the full-scale invasion happened in 2022, I, for the first couple of months, was living in Lviv, well known as kind of the Catholic part of Ukraine. And I remember distinctly a procession for, I believe it was a funeral, going into one of the main Catholic churches in the center of Lviv. Nearly every citizen stood in respect. Yeah. Not all of them were Catholic, I am sure. Many of them would have been Protestants, maybe Orthodox, certainly Orthodox. Putin has done something that czars, that the patriarch has tried to resist happening for so much of this land's history, and that is to divide and conquer. Now, if you are Ukrainian Catholic, if you are Ukrainian Protestant, if you are a Ukrainian Jew, if you are, there are also other forms of Orthodoxy here that are well accepted. It's just the UOC that is. But most of what I see is a unified Ukraine, and that these differences are being if not overlooked, then certainly it is understood that we are all Ukrainians, and that didn't exist when I first visited in 2001. What do you think about that?
In religious life, we really have unity in diversity. And we have wonderful real example of our mutual respect and fruitful cooperation. It is a Ukrainian Council of Churches and Religious Organizations, which unite on voluntarily basis 17 different denominations Orthodox, Catholics, different Protestant unions like Baptists, Pentecostals, Adventists, Evangelical, Christians, Lutherans, a representative of Armenian Church, representatives of Jewish community and Muslim community. And all our decisions we adopted unanimously. On the basis of consensus. All members of this council have equal rights, and every half of the year, chair rotated goes to the next member of the council. And we, as a live picture, try to demonstrate to society how it's possible, at the same time, to keep your own identity. We don't change our teaching, our right of services. We don't discuss who is right, who is wrong in the theological questions, but we demonstrate that religion is able to unite us because all of us have same desire to bring as much as possible good to society, to people. And Ukraine really is very unique, specifically if compared with neighboring countries. It's a very unique country because for Ukraine, coexistence and cooperation between Orthodox Christians, Protestant Christian, Catholic Christian, Jews and Muslims is essential, is a native. Jews living on our territory in Ukraine for centuries, almost 1,000 years of Jewish history we have in Ukraine. Muslim community lived on Ukrainian territories, specifically in Crimea for centuries.
Yeah, they have their own parliament, the Majlis.
Yeah. And this creates a very unique atmosphere where we really understand each other. And we know and we saw many attempts from Russia to blow up Ukrainian society, and
often quite bloody,
because of religion. Try to divide Ukrainian society in question.
Divide and conquer.
But we don't allow Russia to do so because we, representatives of different denominations and even different religion, we repeatedly told that we are united in support of Ukrainian independence, integrity, and statehood. And what is important in case of this particular law, all our major religious communities, Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Muslims, all of them, with only one exception of representatives of Moscow Patriarchate, all of them told that we need this law. We need this law to protect our freedom, because
the chief rabbi supported it. Yes,
sure. Supreme Mufti told the same. Many Protestant leaders told that we lived under Soviet persecution, and we know from our own experience what is the real persecution. And we testify that in Ukraine, even during this war, we have such level of religious freedom which in many countries you never find. And it's important proof, because if only one church, our Orthodox Church of Ukraine, told that, yes, we support this law, it will be a question. Yes, it will be suspicion that it's a benefit for our church and we support. But all major religious communities support this law because all of them knows
the truth.
The truth, and how Russia tried to weaponize religion. And specifically, we not just have imaginations what will be happened if Russia will prevail. We know from huge number of evidences of real stories what happens with religious leaders and religious communities which now situated under Russian occupation in Crimea,
It's interesting
in
you
Donbass.
bring that up because the great Ukrainian historical professor, Professor Zhysluk, out in Lviv one time, and I had a conversation about this. And he said, Ukraine has become multicultural by empire crossing through and all the remnants, and we've had to learn how to live together.
Yeah.
So there is fertile ground for democracy in Ukraine because of this mixing of all these different groups that have to learn to live together. Moscow became multi-ethnic by conquest.
Sure.
And so as it went through and conquered lands of other religions, it would adopt them, but it was always understood that it would be the patriarchy. So when you talk about the irony of being accused of persecuting Christians in Ukraine, but we see Moscow moving into the occupied territories. And tell me, what are we seeing when the Russians occupy Ukrainian lands when it comes to religious sites?
First of all, they immediately try to limit all the kind of freedoms, specifically freedom of religion and belief, because their policy is to find persons who are able to be a leader, moral leaders of resistance. And they try to fear them, to detain them, to deport them, or even kill them. And we have many cases that churches of Orthodox Church of Ukraine, houses of prayer of Protestant communities, Baptist, Pentecostals, evangelical Christians, was turned to military objects for Russian army, turned for places for Russian officials, or just closed. For example, officially by the governor of Zaporizhia Oblast, appointed by Russia, Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church on the territory of Zaporizhia Oblast of Russia is totally banned. You and audience must understand huge difference between Ukraine and Russia in terms of law on religion. Because in Ukraine, you are able to practice religion without any registration or any permission from authorities. If you would like to have a right of legal entity, you must register under the law, but the procedure of registration is very easy. Just 10 people are able to create new congregation, new parish, and practice their religion in the way what they want. In Russia, it's not possible to practice religion without registration. And even a particular community being registered under Russian law for specific activity, for example, classes for children about religion or evangelical program outside on the streets, every time they must have specific permission from authorities. And one of the mechanisms of persecution on occupied territories is the registration, because they want from religious communities to be registered under Russian law, which means the recognition of occupation, recognition that Russia have legal right to operate here and to have some registrations here. Another one important mechanism of persecution, not just in the religious sphere, but in particular life, is obligation to have Russian passport. To have Russian citizenship.
Yes, in the occupied territory.
On occupied territories, if you
and it applies to so much.
If you have no passport, you have no ability even to travel between two cities, because every time when you cross a checkpoint, you must present document, and you every time been asked why you still till now not received a Russian passport. You don't believe that this is Russia?
Yeah, and then you can't get pension, you can't get medical assistance, you can't. So. Yes, I only have a couple of more questions for you because I know your time is very limited. But I want to talk about. Well, let's do the Lavra first.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know what the Lavra is, in Kiev there is one of the most beautiful monasteries and churches and holy grounds in all the world. It is equatable to the Canterbury or to I suppose
Vatican,
the Vatican, or the Wailing Wall. Or
150 saints are lying in their bodies as a holy relics in caves of this Lavra.
It's a very, very solemn, holy place, but also incredibly beautiful and historically and religiously very important. So when the war's over, come to Kiev and do go visit the Lavra. Every time I go, it's beautiful and astounding, and it touches me. Even though I was born Episcopalian, I was raised Episcopalian. But I oftentimes wonder if the Russians are, if something were to hit the Lavra, if the Russians were to send a missile and it were to strike the Lavra, it would be devastating to them in Russia, because to Russians, and in the Russian Orthodox Church, the Lavra is also an incredibly holy place, as we say, the birthplace of the entity Rus, which they stole. But nevertheless, do you think the Lavra in some ways acts as a shield for Kiev? Because if the Russians were to damage the Lavra, it would be very bad for they themselves.
As a person of faith, I know as a Christian, as an Orthodox Christian, I believe, we all Christians believe that people not die. They just goes to another level of existence. And we believe that Ukrainian saints who spend all their life in this holy place, in prayer, in to be a hermit and to achieve the salvation of their own life, but we believe that they pray. And this holy place and another one, absolutely important place, St. Sophia Cathedral.
Yes.
Where is one of very unique mosaic icon.
Here in Kiev, right on the top of the hill there, one of the most beautiful churches.
Mosaic icon of Mother of God, which called Aranta. In Greek, it's mean praying Mother of God. She staying over the high altar with hands raised over her, and it's remind me the example of Moses when Jewish people have battle with their enemies, and Moses staying with raised hands, and when he staying with raised hands blessed the people, Jews prevailed. And when he put his hands down because he tired, enemies will prevail. And this icon reminds us, and our saints, our sacred places reminds us that we are not alone. We are not just people who struggling for our lives or our property or our particular secular things. What we have huge history of saints, of heroes, of people which really we proud about them, and they are not eliminated from existence. They still are with us, and I believe that Kiev still free, and Russians not conquer our capital. They imagine that in 3 days or some weeks they will conquer Kiev and everything will fall very quickly. But we have this divine support. We need really international support in many ways, but we have really this divine support and inspiration. And Holy Lavra, St. Sophia Cathedral, our saints and our holy places inspire us, because it is a proof that we fighting not for statehood, for European, Euro-Atlantic choice of Ukrainian people. We fighting for truth itself. We fighting for life itself. We are on the side of light. Yes. And we fighting against darkness which try to eliminate us. And this is really existential fighting. And
there is the physical fight, there is the physical fight, and there is the spiritual fight. And that leads me to my last question, Your Eminence. And it's very important, aside from all of these other subjects. Religion, God, spirituality, these things are very important to Ukrainians, very important to Ukrainians. They are going through a great trauma, a great suffering, a great pain. You, as the leader of a flock, you must know their spirit, their morale, if you're talking about military terms. Yeah. But it's more than that. How are the people of Ukraine bearing up in their hearts, in their souls, under this terrible time? And what is your impression of their well-being spiritually?
It's a very hard task to stay firm, not being broken inside, but many signs, specifically in our modern history, gives our people proofs that God is really with us. We just some hundreds meters from Independence Square, from Maidan. And at the moment when riot police try to vanish the territory and to arrest all the people who protested during the Revolution of Dignity. And people have no military protection, they have no weapon, and they just use the wheels from trucks and fired them, and wind goes from their side and bring the smoke to attackers. And people told that this is really divine intervention, because God protects us even such way through this wind. And we have many, many proofs that we stay just one step before the abyss. But God helps us many times. And this understanding that till now, God provides us. We feel now, me, myself specifically, like Jews who goes through the desert to promised land.
A trial.
Yeah, and yes, through this desert, it's so hard to go forward. But we must go, and we understand, because we are not alone, we are not abandoned. God with us, people of goodwill from around the globe with us, people praying for us, people try to do as much as possible to help us. And it's not possible to lose this fighting, because if God and saints and people of goodwill with us, we must win, we must prevail.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Thank you very much for your time here. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you.